The book of 1 Samuel is a part of the Old Testament in the Bible, and it is an important historical and prophetic book in both Judaism and Christianity. It serves as a bridge between the era of the Judges, as described in the book of Judges, and the establishment of the monarchy in Israel. The book of 1 Samuel is known for its rich narratives and significant characters. Here is an explanation of the book of 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel can be divided into several key sections. The birth and early life of Samuel, 1 Samuel 1-4. The reign of Saul, 1 Samuel 5-15. The rise of David, 1 Samuel 16-31. Samuel's death and burial, 1 Samuel 25-28. The death of Saul and Jonathan, 1 Samuel 29-31. Key themes and significance. The transition to monarchy. 1 Samuel marks a pivotal period in Israel's history as the nation transitions from a loose confederation of tribes led by judges to a centralized monarchy. The book explores the challenges and consequences of this transition. Prophetic ministry. The book highlights the role of Samuel as a prophet and judge in Israel. Samuel's prophetic ministry includes anointing Saul and later David as kings. Leadership and character. The contrasting leadership styles and character traits of Saul and David are central to the narrative. Saul's disobedience and insecurity contrast with David's faithfulness, humility, and reliance on God. Divine sovereignty. 1 Samuel underscores God's sovereignty and his involvement in the affairs of Israel. God's choice of leaders and his guidance are evident throughout the book. Friendship. The deep friendship between David and Jonathan is a poignant theme in 1 Samuel, exemplifying loyalty, selflessness, and covenantal bonds. 1 Samuel 1-4 introduces us to key characters and pivotal events in Israel's history. It begins with the story of Hannah, a barren woman who fervently prays for a child. God answers her prayer, and she gives birth to Samuel, whom she dedicates to God's service at the tabernacle in Shiloh. Samuel grows up serving in the tabernacle under the high priest Eli. The section also recounts the capture of the Ark of the Covenant by the Philistines and the death of Eli and his sons. Samuel grows up under the guidance of Eli, the high priest, and begins to hear the voice of God. Meanwhile, Israel faces threats from the Philistines, who capture the Ark of the Covenant in battle. When Eli's corrupt sons are killed in the conflict, Eli himself dies upon hearing the news, symbolizing the end of his family's priesthood. The Philistines suffer divine punishment for their disrespect of the ark, and they return it to Israel. Samuel emerges as a prophet and judge, guiding the nation through a period of spiritual and political renewal. These chapters set the stage for the rise of Israel's monarchy and the anointing of its first king, Saul. 1 Samuel 5-15 covers a significant portion of Israel's history, focusing on the rise and reign of King Saul. In response to the Israelites' desire for a king, Saul, a Benjaminite, is anointed as the first king of Israel. His reign is marked by both successes and failures. Samuel serves as a prophet during this period and is instrumental in the anointing of Saul as king. In these chapters, we witness the consequences of the Philistines capturing the Ark of the Covenant, a sacred symbol of God's presence, and the judgment brought upon them by God through plagues and misfortunes. Eventually, the ark is brought to Beth Shemesh, where the people fail to treat it with the reverence it deserves, leading to tragic consequences. Following this, Samuel serves as a prophet and judge, guiding Israel in their relationship with God. The people demand a king to rule over them, and God grants their request by anointing Saul, a Benjamite, as the first king of Israel. Saul initially shows promise as king, leading Israel to victory in battle against their enemies. However, his disobedience to God's commands, particularly in sparing the Amalekites and their king, Agag, leads to his downfall. In 1 Samuel 13-15, Saul's impatience and failure to wait for Samuel to offer sacrifices, his presumptuousness in offering sacrifices himself, and his incomplete obedience in sparing Agag, the king of the Amalekites, all contribute to God rejecting him as king. Samuel rebukes Saul for his disobedience, and God rejects him as king, choosing instead to establish a new dynasty through David, the shepherd boy anointed by Samuel. These chapters highlight the themes of obedience, faithfulness, and the consequences of disobedience, as well as the transition from the period of the judges to the establishment of the monarchy in Israel. 1 Samuel 16 to 31 covers a significant period in Israel's history, focusing on the transition from King Saul to King David. After Saul's disobedience and rejection by God, Samuel anoints David, the youngest son of Jesse, as the future king of Israel. David gains prominence in the royal court, defeats Goliath, and becomes a fugitive when Saul becomes jealous and seeks to kill him. The book highlights the complex relationship between David and Saul, with David's loyalty to God and refusal to harm Saul. In 1 Samuel 16, we see God rejecting Saul as king due to his disobedience and choosing David, the youngest son of Jesse, as the future king of Israel. Samuel anoints David in secret, and the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him from that day forward. In the subsequent chapters, David serves Saul as a musician and armor-bearer, and he gains popularity among the people for his bravery and leadership. However, Saul becomes increasingly jealous and paranoid of David's rising influence and seeks to kill him. David flees from Saul's wrath, gathering a group of loyal followers known as his mighty men. Despite Saul's relentless pursuit, David spares Saul's life on 2 occasions, demonstrating his respect for God's anointed king. Meanwhile, Saul consults with the witch of Endor in a desperate attempt to gain guidance, which ultimately leads to his demise. In the climax of the narrative, the Philistines wage war against Israel, resulting in the deaths of Saul and his sons, including Jonathan, David's close friend. David mourns their deaths and eventually becomes king over the tribe of Judah. 1 Samuel 16 to 31 highlights themes of obedience, faithfulness, and the consequences of sin. It also illustrates the providential care of God in raising up David as a leader after his own heart, despite the challenges and obstacles he faces along the way. In 1 Samuel 25 to 28, we encounter several significant events in the lives of David and Saul, as well as other key figures. Chapter 25 begins with the death of Samuel, the prophet and judge of Israel. Soon after, we find David and his men residing in the wilderness of Paran, where they encounter Nabal, a wealthy man with large flocks. When David's men ask Nabal for provisions, he refuses, prompting David to plan an attack. However, Nabal's wise and generous wife, Abigail, intervenes and prevents bloodshed by providing food and gifts to David and his men. David is grateful for Abigail's wisdom and spares Nabal's household. Meanwhile, in chapter 26, we witness another encounter between David and Saul. Despite having the opportunity to kill Saul, David spares his life once again, recognizing him as the Lord's anointed king. Saul acknowledges David's righteousness and promises not to harm him, but their reconciliation is short-lived. In chapter 27, David, fearing for his safety, seeks refuge among the Philistines. He receives permission from King Achish of Gath to settle in the town of Ziklag, where he lives with his men for over a year. During this time, David raids neighboring tribes and deceives Achish into thinking he is attacking Israel's enemies. The narrative continues in chapter 28 with Saul's desperation as he faces the impending Philistine threat. Unable to receive guidance from the Lord through dreams, prophets, or the Urim and Thummim, Saul resorts to seeking out a medium or witch at Endor. He disguises himself and seeks the help of the medium to summon the spirit of Samuel. The spirit of Samuel appears and prophesies Saul's impending defeat and death, confirming God's judgment on him for his disobedience. In summary, 1 Samuel 25 to 28 portrays David's character as one of righteousness and mercy, contrasting with Saul's increasing desperation and disobedience. It highlights themes of faithfulness, wisdom, and divine judgment, as well as the complexities of leadership and the consequences of sin. The book concludes with the tragic deaths of Saul and his sons, including Jonathan, in a battle with the Philistines. David mourns the loss of his friend Jonathan and begins his journey to become king. 1 Samuel 29. In this chapter, the Philistine rulers gather their armies to fight against Israel. Achish, the king of Gath, has been an ally of David and has given him refuge from King Saul, who is seeking to kill David out of jealousy. However, as the Philistines prepare for battle, other Philistine leaders express concern about David's loyalty. They fear that he may turn against them in battle and side with Israel. As a result, they persuade Achish to send David and his men back to the land of the Israelites. 1 Samuel 30. David and his men return to their home in Ziklag, only to find that the Amalekites have raided the town, burned it, and taken their families captive. Distraught and grief-stricken, David seeks guidance from God. With divine assurance, David and his men pursue the Amalekites, rescue their families, and recover all that was stolen. 1 Samuel 31. Meanwhile, the Philistines engage in battle with Israel. Despite David's absence, King Saul leads his forces against the Philistines. During the battle on Mount Gilboa, the Israelites suffer a devastating defeat, and Saul's sons, including Jonathan, are killed. Saul himself is wounded by archers and falls on his own sword, choosing death over capture by the enemy. The Israelites flee, and the Philistines take possession of the land. These chapters depict the complex political and military landscape of ancient Israel and highlight the themes of loyalty, faith, and the consequences of disobedience to God's will. David's integrity is tested, Saul meets his tragic end, and the stage is set for David's eventual rise to kingship. As we conclude our journey through the book of 1 Samuel, we've witnessed the dynamic interplay between God's sovereignty and human agency in the unfolding of Israel's history. From the humble beginnings of Samuel, the prophet and judge, to the anointing of Saul as Israel's first king, and the rise of David, the shepherd boy who would become Israel's greatest king, this book is a rich tapestry of political intrigue, spiritual revival, and personal transformation. Through triumphs and tragedies, victories and defeats, we see the ongoing faithfulness of God to his people, despite their failings and shortcomings. As we reflect on the lessons and insights gleaned from 1 Samuel, may we be reminded of the enduring truth that God is always at work in the midst of human affairs, guiding, shaping, and redeeming his people according to his sovereign will. Now I invite any questions or comments you may have. Let's delve deeper into the fascinating world of 1 Samuel together. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the book of 1 Samuel. Have a wonderful day, and please don't forget to give a like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so that you can stay up to date on all my new videos about the living word. God bless you all.